Hello, this is Jonathan Wood from Soft Circuits, and in this video I'd like to talk about using and customizing the MFC status bar. And we'll get started right away by creating a new project. It's an MFC application. And we'll call it status bar. Now, in the MFC application wizards, one of the options is an initial status bar. By default, it's checked, and we want to keep that checked so that we have that status bar. And I'll just click Finish to accept all the other defaults. And let's go ahead and just run that and take a look. And there's a status bar at the bottom of the screen. We've actually got a total of 4 panes. To the right, if I press my scroll lock and caps lock, we'll see that we have panes that are indicators of the state of those keys. And then to the left of that, we have a pane that sizes to the size of the window, and that displays most of our messages. Also, as we select menu commands, we see that displays a description of the current highlighted menu command. And if we go into our source code, we can take a look at the mainframe module, and that's the module that defines the status bar. We'll go to the header file and show that. One of the members created automatically for us is of type C status bar, and the name is m_win status bar. And then in the onCreate method, the code creates the status bar, and when it creates it, it then calls set indicators, which creates the different panes, and it passes this array called indicators, and that's defined up here, a static array. And it uses these IDs to specify the different panes in the status bar. And we'll come back to that and customize that a little bit. So for right now, let's add a new command, a new menu command to do some tests. And we'll bring up the one associated with our document type. Let's just add it to the end of the view menu. And I'll put in a separator first, and then we'll just put a command. We'll call it test status bar, and let's add an event handler for that command. And since the status bar is defined in the main frame, we'll go ahead and put our handler in that class. We could put it somewhere else, but that'll be a little simpler just to put it here. So here's our handler for that command, and we want to access that status bar. There is a method in the class, in the C mainframe class, though, and we can call that directly. It's called setMessageText, and it just takes a string argument, and we'll put in a message says processing, and then we'll pause for 3 seconds, and then we'll put up another message that says done. So we're going to change the value, the text on the status bar, and then we're going to pause for a few seconds, and then we're going to display a message that I mistyped, which is done, and let's run that. So we'll select our test bar command, and we'll see that watch the status bar as I do. It says processing, and then it says done, and that will stay there, the text we put there, until some other code changes it. For example, if I go to another menu command, now it displays the description for that command, and when I leave the menu, close the menu, it goes back to ready. One thing, when I highlight our command, you'll notice there's no description for that command displayed on the status bar. So that's another thing we want to change. So go back to the menu. We'll select that menu command, and there's a property called prompt, and we'll put test internal status bar code, and let's try that. So again, we've added our command to the bottom of the view menu. When we highlight it, we now get a description of that command in our status bar. When we run it, it displays a text that we're processing, and when it's finished, it displays a message that we're done. So for slow processes that take a while, that's a good way to display information on what's going on, or possibly popping up other messages. You should note, however, that it's not a good way for a message you want to appear permanently on the status bar, because as I indicated, as soon as you select another command or some other code displays a message on the status bar, it gets overwritten. So let's do a more permanent status bar change. Now, just again, because our status bar is in our C mainframe class, we'll just stick with that for now for simplicity. And let's add a variable. And we'll just make it an integer, and we'll call it mn counter. And the default will be to set it to 0 here in our constructor. So we now have a variable associated with the class, and that is that variable is initialized to 0. Now, when we select our command we just entered or created, I want to just simply increment that variable. So now that command is doing something. It's incrementing the variable, but you can't see it yet. So let's run that, and just so we know where we're at. Again, it displays the message on the status bar, and it's incremented that variable, but there's no indication of that. So what we'd like to do is add another pane that shows the value of that variable, so that we have information on that. But we don't want to use that set message text, because that will not be permanent. So the first thing we want to do is add a new pane to the status bar, and this is where we new panes are added in that array I showed earlier of the panes in the status bar. Now, the way you add a new pane is not that intuitive, because what you actually do is add a new entry to the string table resource. And let's bring up the string resources, and looking in here, we see we have a couple already that begin with ID_indicator, and those are used simply for that purpose. We'll see that there's strings for cap and num and scroll for scroll lock and so forth. So we're going to add another variable, or a string rather, ID_indicator test, and we'll just accept the default value. And then we have to give a text value for that string. Now, I should point out, the text we're going to change at runtime, so we're not so much concerned with what the text says here. However, the text we enter here does play an important role, because it sets the width of the pane. So we need to make sure we put enough text here so that our pane is the right size. Now, we're going to be displaying an integer. It could get up to several digits, so let's go ahead and put 4 zeros in, and that'll allow us to display a value up to 4 digits. And we'll go back to our array, and now we can add our the ID we use for the string, and we'll insert it in that array, and so that now that's part of the status bar. The other thing we need to do is hook that up so that it stays current. And if I run it now, we'll see now that we do have that new pane, and it just has the 4 zeros, which we're going to change. So it's displayed. So now we're going to give it our content. Let me clean that up a little. Now there is no wizard to add an event handler for a status bar pane, so we do need to type this in manually. We'll make it AFX_message for our because it's going to be a part of the message map, and be type void, and we'll call it on update counter. And the argument is going to be a pointer to a command user interface object. And we'll copy that. Put our handler in the source file. And what we will do is call the setText method of the command user interface object. And we'll need a string, so create a string and use the format method to convert our integer to a string. And then finally we do need to add an entry in the message map. Now when we're adding entries like command handlers for our menus and stuff, we use the wizards for that. So we don't normally do this by hand, but here we need to. And it's on update _command _UI, and we need our indicator, which is ID indicator test, and then the name of our function, our method, which is on update counter. And let's try that. Okay, now down at our new pane we created, we'll see that it's just a single zero now instead of the 4 zeros. It's still the same width that it took from our 4 zeros in our string table, but it's showing the current value, which is 0. So let's run our command. We get our description of the command in the status bar. We run it. We get our processing message. And then when it says done, we see that this pane is changed to 1 as our variable was incremented. And the MFC frameworks automatically call our update handler whenever any commands have been executed or anything's changed, and that gets updated, so we don't need to worry about when that gets called. And so that's a general overview of what's available in the MFC status bar. A couple of additional ways you can add to the interface of your applications.